Hi everyone, this is Bill Bradford, and I got to sneak out of the fish shop for a little bit for a change in scenery, as Philadelphia's Restaurant Week is coming up next week. So I wanted to stop off at one of my favorite places, Bistrot La Minette, speak with a great chef, Chef Kenny Bush, and get his insight on some of how he's preparing for this Restaurant Week. So why don't you come on inside? Okay, I'm fortunate enough to be seated with Chef Kenny Bush at Bistrot La Minette here in Philadelphia. Chef, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Okay, Chef, let's get started. I want to talk a little bit about your background.
So I worked in restaurants in D.C., Maryland area as a front of house manager, eventually moving my way up to general manager, and knowing wanted to open my own place as a chef, decided to move to Philly and get into the restaurant scene here in the back of the house.
Now, what's surprising is, when you what you're doing now, you're actually a Yale graduate.
Correct. I went to Yale for American Studies and graduated with that degree. I knew in my heart that I wanted to be in the restaurant industry, but when you get an offer from an Ivy League school, you just kind of have to go.
You have to take it.
And it was a great experience to have as well. So
that's great. What are some things that you draw from either your background or your strengths that influences the menu at all?
So, Bistrot La Minette is a classic French bistro, and we try to stay very true to that identity. But, as a creative individual, I like to put my little seasonal spin or twist onto dishes. So we might do a very traditional dish like rione, which is in French cuisine usually a different cut of meat, like pork shoulder. But we like to do pork belly here because it's very much in the food scene what people like to eat. And so we'll use that cut instead, and then we'll do lots of seasonal either fruit or vegetables with that.
This week coming up is Restaurant Week here. What inspires you when you're putting together such menus?
I just love all the seasonal produce that we have in this state. Pennsylvania is an agricultural state, which a lot of people, I think in Philly, don't necessarily realize all this agriculture is going on outside of the Philadelphia area, some inside as well. But we have a lot of great local product, and I would just like to use that to the best of my ability and the best of its availability to complement the other things that we do. The seafood that we do, and that is very classic French. We serve oysters for special occasions, which is very, very classic French. And we like to prepare them simply either with a mignonette or something traditional like a horseradish creme fraiche. On our menu, we often do trout. It's very, very French. France has a lot of rivers, and so river fish is very much a part of French cuisine. Trout meuniere is classic. It's a Miller-style trout, which means that it has a light dusting of flour, because back in the day, your flour and grain mills were run by river power, and so the miller would have access to fresh river fish. So Miller-style trout meuniere, has been on our menu and will always be on our menu as this classic French preparation.
So it's not Miller beer on it.
Exactly. No Miller Lite.
Some people need to.
Well, maybe a little Miller Lite with it, but not necessarily on it. Right now we do monkfish, which is very delicious, and we pair it with lobster butter and lobster beurre blanc. Monkfish is the poor man's lobster, and it really, the way we cook it, we poach it in lobster butter, and it really accentuates the texture and the flavor of the monkfish, and is a really delicious dish as well. Scallops and mussels are also always on our menu. Typically do scallop in a varying preparation. Sometimes we do it with braised leeks. It just depends on the season and what preparation I'm in love with at the time. And then mussels are always on our house specialty, the oeuf de pêcheur. So it's a fisherman-style egg, poached egg with a mussel and tarragon cream sauce.
That sounds amazing. There's so many, you see mussels on menus a lot here in Philadelphia, at least.
And lots of times they're steamed.
Yeah, and this sounds like a little bit more, sounds kind of unique.
Yeah, so we steam the mussels with a little white wine and garlic and shallots, and then we will pick the mussels, debeard them, and reheat them in the sauce, which is made with the mussel opening liquid and a little bit of tarragon. It's a really delicious preparation, and not the way people typically see seafood served. It's very unique to this restaurant.
That's great to hear. Well, I want to see it for myself now, so let's take a trip over to the kitchen and get you to work.
Absolutely.
All right.
So this is our trout meuniere, Miller-style trout, lightly dusted with flour to make a nice crispy skin. This is the Idaho rainbow trout with a lemon almond brown butter sauce, served with haricot vert, and tucked inside the haricot vert are fingerling potatoes, which we've cooked up nice and crispy. This dish is a very traditional dish. You see it at a lot of traditional French restaurants. And so it's one of our classics, one of our house specialties that people really come for. So during restaurant week, I want to make sure that I give people a true and authentic taste of Bistrot La Minette. So taking this dish off that menu is not something that I'd want to do. The fish itself just lends itself to a nice crispy skin, which I think is important. If you're going to leave the skin on fish, it has to be crispy, and the trout has a nice, very thin, easy to crisp skin, which I think is delicious. It's also a light, flaky fish, which I think people during restaurant week, but year-round, really like. It's an accessible fish that people understand. They know what trout is. They understand the flavor. It's nice and mild, and something that people really like. Now, there are a lot of fish that are very traditionally used in French cuisine. Some that are easy to get, some that are very hard to get. And we have a lot of local options that are very similar. So I read books, see what some of these classic French recipes use, and try to get a fish that is either the same or very similar in flavor profile, texture, and size to try to reproduce some of these classic French dishes.
And I mean, you're a chef, so you're naturally creative, which is great. But I guess sometimes you also have to stick with the classics. Do you ever get to go outside the box and go, God, this isn't French, but I really want to do this?
Yeah, that's what I do for specials. So, for example, I love sardines. I love grilled sardines. And the French love grilled sardines as well. But they would probably eat them on top of a simple salad of frisée and lemon. I do it on a deconstructed ratatouille. So, you know, I have some wiggle room to be creative and still be true to the identity of French cuisine. The things that we're really good at is really recreating that classic French bistro, and you really feel transported to France when you're here.
I know. I mean, I live in the city. I'm not going to France anytime soon, but I can always come here and pretend I am, and I get the best, definitely the most authentic French food, for sure.
Cool.
So,
Thanks.
I appreciate it, Chef.
Thanks.
All right, yeah, it's kind of cold out, but it's hard for me to leave Bistrot La Minette because it's so beautiful here. I did get to try out that trout dish, by the way. So remember, if you have any questions or late additions you want to ask your sales rep, please do. There's all kinds of information we can give you to make your restaurant week the best one yet. So remember, follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you have any seafood questions, restaurant questions, or general questions about my new haircut, remember, we will definitely address them on our next update. So this is Bill Bradford saying, remember, we're not broadcasters, we're fish people.